I know what's gone on previously in my previous prison sentences. I wrote a letter to my wife, and it was a detailing letter.
2025, but I'm entering my 3rd month of solitary confinement within Woodhill Prison. After 42 days, they had to go to the government. After 42 days of isolation, whose decision is it? Because I know people get frustrated with the prison, it's not the prison. All decisions about me and my time in jail are coming from the government. I had to give a written response with my opinion on my isolation. After 42 days, it was going to the government for them to decide whether to continue. So I wrote my response. Who said this has to happen? When I arrived, I sat down with a psychiatrist and asked her, "What's 9 months of solitary confinement going to do to me?" She said it would be devastating for my mental health. So I asked, "Then why are they doing it?" Every 2 weeks, I have a meeting with the governors, the mental health team, a psychiatrist, probation, and the independent monitoring board. They are all there because I'm in solitary confinement. This week, I told them, I feel different. I know how I feel. I know I'm only 2 months in. So why am I still being held in solitary confinement? And now, in the news, we see the government breaking the rules, holding parties in their lovely gardens. I think I've been naive all my life. It's only now that I realize, why do we trust them? Of course, we shouldn't trust the people in charge. That's how they're in charge, they shouldn't be trusted. From prison, Tommy Robinson is stirring controversy again, this time targeting Keir Starmer. The latest twist, Ricky Gervais has joined the conversation. Those spreading lies and misinformation aren't interested in victims. They are only interested in themselves. Those cheerleading Tommy Robinson aren't interested in justice. They support a man who nearly collapsed a grooming gang case. These are people seeking some vicarious thrill from the street violence that Robinson promotes. Those attacking Jess Phillips, who I'm proud to call a colleague and friend, aren't doing so for protecting victims. Jess Phillips has done 1,000 times more than they have ever dreamed of in fighting for victims of sexual abuse throughout her career. Just as I took on the criminal justice system when I was chief prosecutor, I'm prepared to call this out for what it is. We've seen this playbook before. Tommy Robinson launched a sharp critique of Starmer, challenging the labor leader's carefully crafted image. If his claims hold any truth, Starmer's credibility could be at risk. And that's not even half of it. At this point, I know what they're going to do. I believe I was brought to this prison for a reason, no one can tell me otherwise. Previously, I'd been locked in rooms with Muslims in prison. In the first week in the block, Robinson's accusations targeted Starmer's political record. He claimed Starmer ignores working-class concerns, particularly regarding immigration and cultural integration. He portrayed Starmer as out of touch, more focused on maintaining the status quo than driving real change. I was told I was getting moved. I said to my wife, "I'm getting moved." But nothing changed. There was no outcry except from Lord Pearson, a lawmaker in the UK, making comments to ensure my safety. I knew nothing had been done. I imagined sitting down, writing a letter to my wife and children. What am I telling them? That I know, by doing what I do, this moment will come. I've chosen this path, but I want my children to know I didn't choose it over them. I detailed to my wife that it's not just about our children, it's about every child. I'm not apologizing because I'm not sorry for what I've done. I'm apologizing for what it has caused. Robinson also criticized Starmer's foreign policy, financial decisions, and what he called a history of broken promises dating back to his time as Director of Public Prosecutions. Why am I not in a decap prison? I asked the mental health team. Is this good for me? One replied. No. I said. How bad is it? But I already knew because I remember what happened last time. So I asked, why are you doing this? I'm a civil offender. I got 18 months, which is insane, for playing a film. A film they said wasn't in the public interest. Well, I think it is. On 150 million views, it certainly was in the public's interest. Yeah, but they sentenced me to 18 months. Now, as a civil offender, you go to an open prison. What's the difference between that and how I'm being held. In an open prison, you get a job outside, you have a car, you go to work, you stay at home 5 days a month, and you have town visits with your family. That is the only prison you go to for committing civil offenses. I'm sent to a maximum security jail, housed with the worst Muslim gangs and jihadists in the country. Then they use that to say I have to go on solitary confinement. And what is solitary confinement? Well, rapists and terrorists are not on solitary confinement. Jaden Axel, who did his little stabbing spree, the Muslim lad, I was in Belmarsh with him. He was 2 cells above me in healthcare. He's got a job, so they're not under solitary confinement. What day is it today? My routine tomorrow, Friday, because people say, yeah, I've got the gym. Robinson claimed. When the state decides who counts as a journalist, that's communism. His accusations seemed designed to erode trust in Starmer. As his statement spread, social media exploded with outrage, skepticism, and calls for an investigation, keeping the controversy trending for days. I've watched in silence. I'm in it. He has a go at me, which is fine because I was on Good Morning Britain at the time talking about this. Here's the problem. He repeats in the film a series of things that are lies. That's why he's been found in contempt of court, and that's why he's been put in prison. The reason we know he's lying is that he was sued by the Syrian refugee in court. A judge, in a very lengthy verdict and conclusion, which I read in full, and I recommend everyone else does too, made it clear. All 5 of the witnesses that Robinson produced in court were discredited by the judge. He said they were not credible. He said a lot of them were making stuff up completely. The attempt by Robinson to portray the Syrian refugee boy as the villain, not the victim, was a lie. The boy who was accused of bullying him was thrown out of the school because of his prior record, and this incident happened before it ever got made public, through a viral video. So, yeah, people in America do look at Tommy Robinson in a very different way than we do here. The reason Nigel Farage has disowned him, and wants nothing to do with him is because we see through him. Tommy Robinson is a convicted football hooligan. Just as Labour thought the storm had passed, Ricky Gervais weighed in with his sharp wit and fearless satire. He took aim at Westminster, proving that sometimes a well-timed joke hits harder than a political speech. Robinson is someone who has been guilty of mortgage fraud. He forged a passport to get into America because he couldn't travel due to his criminal record. He has been found in contempt of court twice for nearly wrecking trials of grooming gangs. He turned up and made defamatory statements at the courtroom, which nearly led to the whole case being collapsed. Now, he's been found in contempt again. With Gervais weighing in, the controversy exploded. His remarks went viral, sparking debates and adding unexpected scrutiny to Starmer's response. What began as a political dispute became a cultural moment beyond Labour or Robinson's control. Then, just as things seemed to settle, Gervais took it even further, to court, for repeating lies about the Syrian boy in his film Silence, which has been viewed over 150 million times. I understand why people in America have a slightly warped view of Robinson, but I can tell you that is the reality. His next move wasn't just a passing joke. It was a direct challenge, one that sent shockwaves through both his fans and political circles alike. And when people saw what he said next, it became impossible to ignore. What did Gervais reveal that turned this from a controversy into a full-blown crisis? When the poison of the far right leads to serious threats, to Jess Phillips and others, that, in my book, is where a line has been crossed. I enjoy the cut and thrust of politics, the robust debate that we must have. But that has to be based on facts and truth, not on lies. Not on those who are so desperate for attention that they're prepared to debase themselves and their country. So, this government will get on with the job of protecting victims, including child sexual abuse, mandatory reporting, and accelerating the processes. But what I won't tolerate is this discussion and debate based on lies. Before we move on, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us keep bringing you the stories that matter. Now, back to the video. A man who had just come out of jail after 13 months had been encouraging his associates to behead her parents because they were non-believers. He spent 30 months in jail for promoting ISIS terrorism, and authorities knew he was still a threat. That's why he was monitored 24 hours a day. He was only out of jail for 2 days before he went on to kill people. Why was he let out? When will we start treating these men differently? They shouldn't be put in prison with general criminals or drug dealers. They are on another level, foreign fighters, enemy combatants at war with us. Rehabilitation programs won't change their minds. They are followers. Jav jumped into the debate with a sharp tweet. Starmer's about as in touch with the working class as I am with quantum physics. Racking up thousands of retweets. This wasn't just casual mockery. He doubled down with a detailed Instagram post calling politics a great British pantomime, and pointing out the irony of a jailed man shaking up the establishment more than those in power. Muhammad's followers are acting on what he told them, backed up by scripture. The terrorist who went on his killing spree, do you know what he actually said before he went to jail? When he was last sentenced, he said, "We can rape Yazidi women because the Quran commands us to." Yet people still scratch their heads as to why 90% of grooming gang convictions involve Muslim men. We're not even allowed to ask if it's linked to scripture. It's infuriating. Innocent people are getting stabbed and murdered. Jav quipped. If Tommy Robinson is your voice of reason, you've got bigger problems than just Starmer. Taking shots at both sides. His humor underscored a deeper issue, Starmer's disconnect with voters. With over 14 million Twitter followers, Jav's message reached beyond political circles, sparking debates among those who rarely engaged in politics in a way that op-eds and news reports hadn't. He made British politics impossible to ignore. Terrorist attacks don't have to happen. Leaders just need to have the courage to act instead of being weak. I feel like I'm going to burst a blood vessel. Piers Morgan, you're a hypocrite. Every news presenter sitting there, you're all hypocrites. You called me a racist and an extremist. Now, after all this, you're saying, I'm from the Islamic community, and I'm disgusted by this. It was fine for you to say it then, but when we called it out, we were labeled bigots and extremists. You targeted us, slandered us, silenced us, and now we're watching it all play out, while you do nothing to stop it. The political establishment reacted with confusion and concern. Some MPs dismissed Jav as just a comedian, unwittingly proving his point, that those in power preferred to brush off criticism rather than address it. I don't think Tommy Robinson is proving anything, one commentator said. I didn't say he was, another responded. I said he was an extremist, but that doesn't mean he's wrong about everything. The conversation continued, with a Muslim caller arguing that Robinson wasn't an extremist, just someone who spoke certain truths. Robinson had just been sentenced to 18 months in prison, with the news claiming it was for spreading false information. In reality, he had been jailed for telling the truth. As the dust settled, one thing was clear, Jav had shifted the conversation. What started as a fringe controversy had turned into a nationwide debate. Beyond the political fallout, his involvement raised a bigger question: how much influence should entertainers have in shaping political discourse? Far-right activist Tommy Robinson was jailed for 18 months for contempt of court after admitting to repeating false allegations about a Syrian refugee. Robinson, whose real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, continued to spread the claims even after being successfully sued for libel in 2021. He repeated them in a film viewed millions of times. The judge said Robinson's actions suggested he saw himself as above the law. His accusations and Jav's commentary revealed a deeper issue, a growing distrust in British politics. This was no longer just about Starmer or Labour, but a broader frustration with a system seen as out of touch. Westminster's old guard now faces pressure, not just from political figures, but from unexpected voices shaping the national conversation. Opponents or media critics are not the only ones raising concerns. Unexpected voices, including comedians, cultural figures, and even prisoners, are joining the conversation. In an era where influence extends beyond Parliament and newsrooms, the battle for public trust is being fought in new arenas. Stephen Yaxley Lennon, better known as Tommy Robinson, has pleaded guilty to contempt of court charges over his banned documentary called Silenced. Robinson was arrested after screening the film at a rally in Trafalgar Square in July. The documentary was shown despite a court order banning its release, following Robinson's libel loss to a Syrian refugee 3 years ago. Today, appearing in court, he admitted to knowingly flouting the injunction multiple times. With potential penalties of up to 2 years in jail, a fine, or both, the hearing continues. How did it come to this? A comedian and a jailed activist are resonating more with the public than elected leaders. The backlash isn't just about Robinson's claims or jokes, it reflects a deeper demand for transparency, accountability, and leadership that truly represents ordinary people. With frustration at a boiling point, Westminster can't afford to ignore it any longer. Like and subscribe to our channel and watch more videos like this here.